Hello, I'm the Locomotive engineer. Just about 3 years ago, my friend at the Alcos and Rarities channel and I took a week-long railfan vacation, traveling through Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey in search of classic diesels. It was by far one of the coolest train-related trips that I've ever taken, and I got to visit a number of places on my to-do list for the first time ever. Chief among those places, and the backbone of our trip, was the city of Scranton, home to the incredible Alcos of the Delaware-Lackawanna Railroad. At the time, we were thrilled to watch a variety of Century Series diesels as they went about their day-to-day duties. It was everything we'd hoped for, and more, and we never even thought that the DL could possibly get much better than it already was. Nevertheless, it did. Less than a year later, an unexpected news item rocked the world of Alco fans everywhere. NKP 190, the classic PA4 under restoration in Oregon for over 2 decades, would be moved east for the completion of its return to operation. It does not take a close inspection of my channel to deduce that I was quite excited. Needless to say, I soon planned a return trip to the Delaware-Lackawanna. Unlike my previous trip to Pennsylvania, this was a brief overnight lightning run. Nevertheless, it was still quite a nice trip, and it even filled some holes that had been left from the previous visit. Chief among those was the fact that we had not actually seen any active steam locomotives during our visit to Steamtown. Feisty little Baldwin No. 26 had been under repair in 2022, but this time it was contentedly shuffling about the yard, putting on a great show. The other big disappointment of the previous trip was the fact that I never got a decent photo of DL3642. As the only surviving example of my favorite model in the Century series, I had wanted to see this big brute for a long time. Unfortunately, the C636 was stored awkwardly behind the Von Storch shops during the 2022 visit, backlit and facing backwards no less. This time, however, it was parked right in the Steamtown yard, in just about the best sunlight you could ask for. One thing that took me completely by surprise when I arrived at Steamtown was the fact that NKP 190 was not actually the first Alco cab unit that I saw. Instead, as I walked up from the parking lot, I could see a diesel off in the distance that clearly bore all the marks of an Alco FA. I took a quick detour up the pedestrian bridge to investigate. Far off behind the back shop, there was indeed an Alco FA in repose. Clearly, it was under restoration, but it looked like it was being well taken care of. I'm still not sure about the history of it. I would suspect that it is the former Long Island cab car that was owned by the Anthracite Railroad's Historical Society and stored in New Jersey for many years, since that unit was eventually moved to Scranton. Because the diesel that I saw was wearing a new coat of plain gray primer, however, it is difficult to say for certain. Speaking of the Anthracite's Road Society, another unexpected bonus of the trip was getting to see one of their Lackawanna painted F3 diesels lead an excursion out of town. As cool as all those things were, however, they were not the reason for my return to Scranton. Most of my time was spent precisely where I had intended, in the company of NKP 190. This was not my first meeting with this incredible diesel. Back in 2014, when it had last made a cross-country trip to the Streamliners at Spencer event at the North Carolina Transportation Museum, I had eagerly traveled down to see it. At the time, however, its cosmetic restoration was incomplete, not that it had mattered to me in the slightest, so I had still held out hope of traveling to Oregon someday after it was completed. Little did I know that Providence would render that unnecessary. Seeing it once again, now fully restored and absolutely radiant in the sunlight, I must admit that NKP 190 brought a few genuine tears to my eyes. For the rest of the afternoon, I documented the locomotive a bit obsessively. I took photos of every detail and every angle, hoping to use the data to draw up the best possible 3D model of the diesel that I could. I had already built a 3D model of the basic Alco PA, of course, but there were plenty of details specific to NKP 190 in particular that I wanted to capture. In the end, those photos did allow me to make the model that I wanted, and you can check out my animation videos to see how it turned out. I also got some more artsy photos, of course, including a favorite technique of mine, the model versus prototype shot. Once the day was over, it was sad to leave NKP 190 behind, of course, but also exciting. I knew that the next time I saw it, this incredible diesel would not be just a static museum piece, it would be a fully working locomotive once again. It ended up being quite a bit longer than I expected before that next trip came. In fact, it wasn't until 2025 that the big day finally arrived. But that is a subject for another video. Until next time, I'm the Locomotive Engineer. Thanks for watching.